I love watching Pham talk about books, but I've never actually read any of her recommendations. I don't really do romance books. They just don't speak to me like that. But Valentine's Day is coming up, and I found this ridiculously cute romance bookshop in London. So I figured, okay, now is the time. Let's see if Pham has good taste. These are 5 of her favorite books. I'm gonna read them all to see if she can convert a romance skeptic like me. One of these books might have done it. The first book I'm gonna read is the Rom-Commers by Katherine. It's not the kind of book I would pick up, but it does look really cute. Pham listed this as one of her favorite books of 2024. And it looks like a nice tame intro into the genre, so let's get to read it. Okay, I just finished book 1. This is about an aspiring screenwriter, Emma, who gets this big break ghostwriting for a famous screenwriter, Charlie. That's him. He's written a really bad rom-com and she's brought in to fix it. He's not happy about that. Shenanigans ensue. You know where this is going. They fall in love. This had me hooked more than I expected. If you know anything about me, you know that I am a sucker for fantasy escapism in the form of wealth, fame, and Hollywood. The book is technically an enemies to lovers arc, but I would say it's a more tame and forgiving version of that trope. They are rude to each other in the beginning, but not intentionally, or like not really to each other's faces that much. I don't get the sense that they genuinely get off on being mean to each other, whereas a lot of enemies to lovers arcs write the male character as being pretty cruel and intentionally hurting the feelings of the female protagonist, and that's just not my vibe. I don't get why people like that, but this was an enemies to lovers that I could tolerate. There will be spoilers, skip ahead if you don't want to know. There was one moment that genuinely charmed me, like charmed the socks off of me. He ties her shoes. It's such a small, cute moment of caretaking, and he physically lowers himself down to help her and is sort of predictive about what her needs are or anticipatory of her needs. It reminds me of one of my favorite scenes of cinema in To All the Boys I've Loved Before, where in the middle of a play fight, Peter Kaczynski absentmindedly moves the popcorn from the couch to the floor. That specific moment felt original to me and compelling, but there's a lot of stuff in here that didn't work for me. I don't have a moral objection to cliches, but the moments in the book felt really forced. The falling on top of each other, the drunken confessions, those are things I've seen a million times, and they weren't done in any way that was particularly compelling or sweet. One thing I really didn't like was that there were a lot of moments that lacked consent. Sure, it was a lot better than if it was written in the year 2002. Like, consent was a consideration, sort of, but also not the main one. There were a lot of moments in dialogue that were like, one character is like, I don't want to do this, and the other character is like, yes, you do. I was not charmed by that. There's also supposed to be a whole character growth arc, and she kind of does go on that journey. She moves from being the sole caretaker of her father to handing off that caretaker role to other people and exploring her own interests. But at the end of the book, the character speaks really cruelly to her little sister, and it's kind of the climax. You think that she's gonna apologize to her sister or have some kind of repair moment, but she doesn't. Instead, you're supposed to think that her sister is the one that needs to apologize. So that felt really regressive to me. I felt like, whoa, she took 10 steps back maturity-wise. But my biggest critique of this book is that it's supposed to be a rom-com. I'm missing a lot of the com. For a rom-com, it wasn't very funny. The format, the manic narration of this reminds me a lot of Sophie Kinsella, author of the Shopaholic series, but without the humor. I do see attempts at humor, I just don't think they worked for me. But if the humor had been successful and genuinely funny, it definitely would have elevated the book a lot. Overall, I think that this was supposed to feel a lot more like eating candy. Maybe that's kind of what rom-com books are for, but instead it felt like eating a low sugar candy. Certainly fun, but definitely lacks substance or nutrition, and also doesn't have the joy of eating full sugar candy. It's like low sugar candy. In a world that feels pretty bleak, I get why someone would pick this up to feel lighthearted and good. Totally respect that. But for me, this comes in at 2.5 stars. I think it was a good first foray into this journey because it's fairly inoffensive except for the weird consent moments or lack of. But it was fun to read. Like, I'm not mad. The next book I'm gonna read is Wild Dark Shore. This is one of Haley's favorites from 2025. One of the expert book readers at Book of the Month recommended her to read it, so she said it's not the kind of book that she would usually read, but it really ended up gripping her, and she gave it 5 stars. So that's how we find ourselves here. Okay, I fully intended this to be a reading montage, but the literal first sentence of this book already has me gripped. I have hated my mother for most of my life, but it is her face I see as I drown. Damn, I'm hooked. Well, what's gonna happen next? You are not meant to have favorites, but my youngest is that. Maybe it is because he is curious and kind and so smart it can make your eyes water. Maybe it's because he whispers to the wind and hears its voice in return. Most likely I don't know why. But it may also be because, for one brief moment long ago, I wished him dead. Sorry, this is a completely different vibe than where we were going last time. And I'm liking it. It's also way denser and a little harder to read. Like I find myself having to go back to be like, wait, what exactly happened? So I'm excited for this one. Okay, book 2, Wild Dark Shore, finished. It takes place in the future, maybe the really extremely near future. I want to say 20 years from now, but probably more like 2 to 5. Climate change ravaged the world. It's about a family living on a remote island, and they're tasked with protecting the last seeds on Earth. One day, a woman washes up on shore. It's a mystery, it's a nature thriller, it's a commentary on climate change and the end of the world. And to tell you what I really liked about it, I'm gonna have to get into some spoilers. Skip ahead if you don't want that. There's this scene where 2 whales have washed up on the beach and they're near death. One character, the woman who washed up on shore, knows that they're doomed and wants to give up on them because she accurately assesses that there's nothing they can do. But the rest of the family refuses to stop trying to save the whales. Not because they really think the whales will survive, but because they want to believe and know that they did everything they could, which is what the whole book's about. You just keep going, not because you believe you'll win, but because you refuse to stop. Every character represents a different response to the end of the world coming. Some try, but get swept up in the storm and die. Some find a lot of meaning in keeping their heads down and just working. Some are pure and radiant. They focus on the good, not because they can't see the bad, but because it's just not relevant to them. And some become so hopeless that they give up completely and turn towards destruction. It's very reminiscent of a story like Interstellar, with climate change and humanity on the brink of devastation. But something that distinguishes it from Interstellar is how powerful femininity, and I really hate to say the divine feminine because that's just like not really how I see the world, but I think it's cool how the women in this story bring something different that the men couldn't. There's something special in what the women offer that propels the family forward in survival. Throughout the book, there's a lot of descriptions of seeds, like very literal scientific descriptions of how different types of seeds work, and the family themselves is tasked with protecting the last seeds on Earth, but each person themselves is also a seed, where they're planting something towards the survival of humanity. Like the youngest child is the seed who insists on growing a new world. And major spoiler incoming, the woman who washed up on shore doesn't survive, but she plants something in each of the characters who do. Now this is a literary fiction, not a romance, despite there being some romance elements to the plot. It surprised me that Haley had it on her list, although looking back at the video, I think it also surprises Haley that it's on her list too. This is more something that I would go for, so it makes sense that I liked it, and I'll give it 4 stars. So the romance didn't work for me, but the literary fiction did. Haley 0 for 1 on converting me to romance, but 1 for 1 on just having good taste. Book 3 is where things get interesting. This is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. It's a fantasy romance, which is a completely different beast. The only fantasy romance I've really read is a video where I vlogged myself reading a Hermione fanfiction. In that one, the fantasy worked for me, the romance didn't as much. You can go watch that video on my channel if you're interested. But yeah, this is a pretty thick book. So let's see if she can get me with a different kind of romance. Oh my god, when there's a map, I don't know, y'all. I feel like Hermione was easy to get into because I already knew the world or the universe. When I have to learn a universe, like, this might not be good. Okay, if I'm gonna be so for real right now, I can't focus on this. It's so hard to get into a new universe. Do you know what I mean? I just got out of one with Wild Dark Shore. Am I ready to be steeped into an entirely new universe where I have to learn the lore and the places and the names and the rules? I think sometimes I get a little, to put it nicely, confident that when something is young adult, I'll just like be able to fly through it. I don't know, fantasy is just tougher. I'm not gonna be able to get through it if I just start reading it. I know what needs to happen, right? I'm only a few pages in. I need to be like 100 pages in order for the fantasy element to stop throwing me off and for me to get like really steeped into it. So we need to change up our strategy. I need to see if I can get this one as an audiobook. Ooh, here we go. All right, I'm gonna pop in my AirPods and we'll try this instead. What did I just read? Book 3, Powerless by Lauren Roberts. done. If the Rom-Commers was like eating low sugar candy, this was like eating flaming hot Cheetos. It's very Hunger Games. It's set in a time where there's a plague, and after the plague, some people get superpowers and some people don't. And the king decides that the people who didn't get superpowers, the ordinaries, are stunting everyone else's superpowers, so they're sentenced to death. Main character, Peyton, is an ordinary, and she's chosen to fight in a Goblet of Fire-esque, Hunger Games-esque style battle while pretending to have a superpower that she doesn't have. Along the way, she meets the king's two sons, the two princes, and they both fall in love with her in a very the summer I turned pretty love triangle. After around 100 pages of the audiobook, I was sufficiently hooked, was able to read myself, and everything just ramps up really quickly. The pacing is go, go, go. The stakes increase. The character building is good. Like, I was invested in Peyton. I was invested in both brothers, which I think is kind of hard to do. And I was invested in the romance, which makes this the first book on the list where the romance actually worked for me. I really cared. I wanted to know who she would pick, even though that's sort of obvious. And I really, really wanted to know what happens next. And I still want to know what happens next because I believe it's a trilogy. Now, could I critique the writing of the book? Yes. It's simple. It's redundant. Everything is described as sticky. Like, over and over and over again, everything is sticky and it over explains a lot. But like, come on, it's a young adult novel. It's written like a young adult novel. It's hard to fault the writing for suiting the audience that it's intended for. The bigger issue with the book is that it's so derivative of the Hunger Games and Harry Potter that at times it feels like less of its own thing and more like a really, really good fan fiction. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, fan fiction takes something that you already know you love and gives you more of it, which is what the book did. It felt very familiar to me and I was hooked. I was entertained. I wanted to know what was going to happen. Overall, I'll give it 3.5 stars for the characters, the stakes, and getting me super invested. The 1.5 off is just for the writing, which, again, it's a young adult novel. Hard to blame it. And for feeling like I've read this book before. But in terms of romance, was I converted? Yeah, I think I was. This one got me. That's 1 for 2 on romance. Now book 4. This is Cover Story. This is the one book Haley gave 6 stars out of 5. If any book on this list is gonna fully convert me, it should be this one. The Rom-Commers was like low sugar candy. This is like gummy vitamins. Cover Story by Mhairi McFarlane. Haley's 6-star book. 6 out of 5. 2 journalists pretend to date each other to get access to a critical source to help them take down the mayor who's been abusing his power against women. It's fake dating meets investigative journalism. I know I've already made this callback before, but the plot of fake dating reminds me so much of To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Except of course they're adults, not teenagers, and the stakes are a little higher. Off the bat, I really need to get something off my chest. We're 4 books in, and every single one of them is enemies to lovers. I don't know if it's just the books I happened to pick, that it's like a coincidence, or if her taste is just enemies to lovers. But I'm like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I can't keep doing enemies to lovers. By book 4, I get it. I get the trope. I really cannot read any more of these. I'm genuinely hoping that book 5 is something different. Now, diving in a little deeper, this was better than the Rom-Commers. The writing is stronger, it has a bit more perspective, the characters have more depth, and the journalism thriller angle gives it some real stakes. The whole time they're actually trying to bring down a powerful man in a sort of dangerous way. So there's this feminist thread running through the whole thing that gives it more weight. If the Rom-Commers was low sugar candy, this is like gummy vitamins. Still sweet, still fun, but there's something in it that makes you feel like you're getting more than just candy. But 4 books in, Cover Story, Powerless, Wild Dark Shore, they're all doing the same structural thing. Man's point of view, woman's point of view, back and forth, showing how they keep misreading each other, which, like, fine, I guess it works, but the formula is so obvious now. It's so hard to read back to back. But at least with Powerless, I could buy the enemies part. Those 2 were literal enemies. They were very clearly real, legitimate. When you think of the word enemy as in war, like, they are enemies. So the hatred there is definitely earned. But in this, rival journalists, one of them is an intern who just like happened to kind of not like each other. The animosity between them didn't feel real or genuine or have any reason for it. It felt lazy. And I'm getting so sick of every story hinging on both people's assumptions about the other person is wrong. When I'm reading a romance, I just want to see 2 characters who like each other. Sometimes I just want to see 2 healthy people with unhealthy circumstances, if that makes sense. Like, I want to see 2 people who liked each other from the start. That's why the show Nobody Wants This on Netflix is so good. It's not enemies to lovers. They get each other from the beginning, they like each other from the beginning, but there is drama and tension built into the story that it's circumstantial, that they work together to solve, because at the end of the day, they're partners. Thank you for letting me get that off my chest. All that said, don't get me wrong, this was still fun to read. It was light, it moved fast, the writing was certainly better than the rom-commers, and the feminist journalism thriller layer definitely kept me interested. It's not this book's fault that I just read 3 other enemies to lovers, so I'm gonna not fault it for that and give it 3 stars. For sure better than book 1. Not as crazy as Powerless, not as literary or well written as Wild Dark Shore, but a good, smart, enjoyable read. 4 books down, 1 more to go. We have our final book, Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This is the final boss. Emily Henry is the most well-known name on the list, I believe. I have to admit something to you. I don't know if I'm gonna like this one. Okay, because I tried to read Beach Read by Emily Henry and I could not finish it. I just didn't care. I wasn't bought in. I'm really not trying to be disrespectful to people who do like Emily Henry or Emily Henry herself, but my god, I could not read that book. But I see her name everywhere, all over these book girlies pages, so I'm like, maybe that one just didn't vibe with me. Let me give it another shot. And again, Haley Pham gave this 5 stars. We're gonna try. Emily Henry, the final boss. Can she close us out? Can she convert me? Let's see. There is no way I picked up a 5th enemies to lovers recommendation. There is no way. You guys, how is this possible? It's the same book over and over again. What is happening? I really need someone that loves enemies to lovers to explain it to me, like to this degree. I could read 1 enemies to lovers like a year. I don't know. So far, the intro plot reminds me a lot of The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, except they're mentioning cults in here. I can see Emily Henry lining up a lot of open questions as the hook, but it's so obvious. The hook being written so clearly at the top almost insults my intelligence. Like, I know what you're doing. You're opening like 20 unanswered questions in the very beginning to make me be like, romance, betrayal, a cult, what? It feels like a Mr. Beast YouTube video. It's almost Valentine's Day. I only have 2 more days to read this. I'm already feeling pretty discouraged, but let's see if I can finish it. I'm done with the final book, Great Big Beautiful Life. The enemies to lovers element only lasted for a quarter of the book, so I guess credit where it's due. Similar to Cover Story, it's structured like a story within a story. The main character is a journalist whose job it is to uncover the story of this Kim Kardashian-esque figure named Margaret. So it follows the main character Alice's love story with the competing journalist also trying to uncover this story, and it follows Margaret's life story as someone rich and famous in the public eye, which again, of course, that appeals to me. I found that the story within a story was far more compelling than the actual story. I was so bored during the main character's romance situation and much more drawn in to Margaret's story. But it really felt like I had read that book before, and I had. It's called The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The whole thing felt like a worse ripoff, which is super strange when you consider that Taylor Jenkins Reid wrote one of the quotes for this book. Emily knows how to craft a love story like the all-time greats. Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't know which book came first, but I'm gonna venture to say that Evelyn Hugo came first. If you're gonna steal like an artist, the final product needs to be better than what you stole from, I think. I could see why Emily Henry's name is bigger than the other romance writers I read. Her writing had a certain polish to it that the other ones didn't, but the entire time I read this book, I felt like I was reading a screenplay, and I really don't mean that as a compliment. Some books are written as books, and they're better as books. If you think about the Hunger Games prequel of Songbirds and Snakes, Susan Collins wrote that knowing it would for sure get adapted into a screenplay, yet the book still gives you so much more than you could capture on screen. There's a lot of interiority and nuance and depth that you can capture on a page you can't capture on a screen. Great Big Beautiful Life was not that. More like Great Big Beautiful Movie. It read like a movie adaptation from the very beginning. Everything was so literal and surface level. It didn't feel like a stylistic choice. It just felt very lazy. I could literally see the Netflix lighting in my head as I was reading it. In some ways, the writing was technically better than the other 4 books, but for an author with this level of name name recognition, I just had much higher expectations. It didn't meet any of them. I'm wondering if maybe this isn't a good representation of Emily Henry writing, because there was something there, but it felt like a first draft. At this point, I've tried 3 Emily Henry books and none of them have clicked for me, even though I'm sort of the target audience. But I'm still open to it and I want to get it. So please, someone tell me what I'm missing. Is there a different Emily Henry book I should try? I've done Beach Read, Happy Place, and now fully finished Great Big Beautiful Life. Is there a different Emily Henry book I should try? Either way, this book gets 2 stars. It was fine. It was whatever. The more I'm sitting with it and talking to you about it, the less I like it. Did it convert me? No. But did Haley convert me overall? Now that I've read all 5 books, I'm seeing something that I couldn't before. Save for Wild Dark Shore, I felt like I read the same book 4 times. Like I'd already read each book before I finished it. And it's been bothering me that I felt that way, because it's not like each individual book was terrible. And I probably wouldn't even notice if I read them spaced out. But this is a genre with one of the biggest readerships in publishing. It's built on stories for women, about women, consumed overwhelmingly by women, who are showing up and paying for books that they can see themselves in, which includes me. I realized I went into this project assuming I didn't like romance. And for whatever reason, it just didn't appeal to me, but it's not actually true. And it's never been true. One of my all-time favorite authors is Sophie Kinsella, the godmother of the rom-com, if you will. I read every one of her books at 16 years old, and I've reread them as an adult. They're unapologetic rom-coms, funny and they're sharp. All of them are centered on love stories, and I would give them 5 stars today, no hesitation. Each of the books I read for this project did appeal to me in some way. So it's not that I don't like romance. I've always liked romance, I just didn't call it that, because I think modern romance books look a lot different than what I recognized as romance before. Sophie Kinsella's books have pacing, comedy, life, spark, perspective, originality. The books I just read don't. They follow a very basic formula, and it feels like they sand off the edges of any originality or perspective until all that's left is pleasant, consumable, inoffensive, interchangeable. Each book could have had a different author's name on it, and I wouldn't have blinked twice. Again, Wild Dark Shore being the exception. There's this concept in tech called Enshittification. It's a word for this process that happens with modern tech. Someone builds a product and it's good. People show up for it, then they start to rely on it. Once the demand is established and the audience is locked in reliant on it, the company behind the product start lowering the quality, cut corners, hollow all the value out of it. Because the demand already exists, people will already show up for it. The habit's already formed. They'll keep showing up and paying because the thing still promises to solve the original problem, even if it delivers less and less value over time. And since there aren't many other alternatives, you stay. A prime example of this is Instagram. In the beginning, Instagram was great. It connected you to all your friends. You had fun on it, but then it started to extract from you and want more of your attention, more of your data, introduced advertisements until all that was left is one friend's story in between 100 ads. That's the vibe I got from reading these contemporary romance novels. The market proved that women will show up for stories that take love seriously. Us as readers have demonstrated a high demand for that, but now the quality is being extracted. These books read like the writers were being pushed to create more and produce faster, and to make books that could easily get a contract with Netflix or Amazon, and readers will show up because they're hooked on what the genre is promising. Stories that see them, that center their emotional lives, and treat love as something worth taking seriously, even if the delivery of it gets hollowed out more and more over time. But there's a feedback loop between creators and algorithms and the audience where everything with originality and perspective tends to get sanded down until what's left is fine. It appeals to the most number of people, but doesn't strongly appeal to anyone in particular. I'm gonna say something so maybe controversial, but Great Big Beautiful Life was the most Netflixable of them all. It felt very filter world. Rucker Bregman in the book Humankind quotes Richard Curtis saying this: "If you make a film about a man kidnapping a woman and chaining her to radiator for 5 years, something that has happened probably once in history, it's called a searingly realistic analysis of society. If I make a film like Love Actually, which is about people falling in love, and there are about 1 million people falling in love in Britain today, it's called a sentimental presentation of an unrealistic world. For the 1 million of us who are falling in love in Britain today, it's not sentimental for us, it's real. We want to read stories about that, and those stories deserve to be written like they matter." So does Haley have good taste? In some ways, I can see what is appealing about each of the books, and over time watching her recommendations, her earlier picks skew towards more algorithmic romance, but I think they start to develop over time. Her recommending Wild Dark Shore to me shows that her taste is expanding. I would argue that Cover Story had a bit more perspective and originality than the others, and that's the book that she gave 6 stars. I do feel like her taste expands beyond generic algorithmic romance novels, which is exciting to watch. But am I converted? At this point, absolutely not. Not by the 4 romance novels I read. They felt like first drafts of stories that could have been really good, but they weren't given the time, the space, or the originality to develop into what they deserved to be. To be clear, that's not an indictment on Haley's taste. It's not even an indictment on the authors necessarily. I think it's just an indictment on the capitalistic publishing system trying to extract more money from its readers and give us lower quality over time. I actually like these books to a degree. I just wish that they were better. I want more from them, and I want more for the people who read them. In hindsight, I see that Sophie Kinsella converted me to romance a long time ago, before we had marketing strategy optimizations. She wrote rom-coms with a voice that belonged to her, where if you put a different name on it, you would still kind of know it was her, which is what I want more of. I want more edge, more personality, more originality, more trust that the audience can handle something that wasn't designed or written by a committee. I'd like to offer my own book recommendations for Haley or anyone who reads like her. The first one is The Burnout by Sophie Kinsella. Again, I've talked a big game about this author, and I really love her. May she rest in peace. The Burnout isn't enemies to lovers, but in my opinion has the originality, the creativity, and the spark. The second one is Idol by Louise O'Neill. It's about a famous influencer whose high school best friend cancels them. I make it sound really basic, but it's about so much more than that, like memory and consent and narcissism. It's so good. It has excellent pacing, high stakes, so enjoyable. That's my 6-star book. I think readers of this genre might really like Kitchens of the Great Midwest by Ryan Straddle. It has that whole multiple perspective structure. It's sort of a cookbook novel, like it tells the story through recipes. It's so well done, so original. My 4th recommendation is The Most Famous Girl in the World by Mhairi. I'm recommending it because it's not like it's the best writing in the world, but it is an enemies to lovers that I think handles the story in a more unique, interesting way. And my last one is I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue. The premise of this one is so good. The main character hates her job, so whenever she writes emails to people at work, she writes insults to them at the bottom in white text. And then one day she's caught. Who amongst us hasn't wanted to do that? That one includes a lot of the misreading people, misconceptions of others, takes women seriously, and has a really solid growth journey. Let me know if you've read any of my recommendations, or if you've read any of Haley's recommendations that I read throughout this project. I have a few more of these types of videos in mind, so let me know if you liked the concept, the structure, if there's anything else you want me to read. And shout out to Haley Pham for making the coziest reading vlogs. I love them so much. I'm a fan. I'm really interested to see how her favorite books did or didn't inform and inspire her book that's coming out soon. Bye!